Hello, hello, happy Monday, and welcome to Making Waves with Moana Adams. I'm your host, Moana, a teenage girl with a lot to say and a lot more to learn. Today, we are talking about becoming a hair and makeup artist at 16 and her platform KLB with Libby Wooten. And Libby is going to introduce herself and tell us who she is and what she does.
Hi, everybody. My name is Libby Wooten. I'm 16 years old. I live in Georgia. A couple things about me is I am a hair and makeup artist on the weekends, but during the week, I actually work at a Southern Podiatry in Valdosta. I love my job in the medical field and I'm adopted. A couple more things about me is that I have a platform called KLB, which I will get into later.
Amazing. And before we get into all of those things, we're going to do our segments starting with current obsession. And this is just something about or in your life that you're currently loving. And mine is Vogue's Model Diaries. I've been watching them like so much recently, and I just watched Lila Moss's. I love her energy, and she's also a short girl. She is the same shoe size as me. So, like, as a model, I really look up to her and really love watching her videos.
For me, my obsession would have to be reading. This year, I started reading a lot of Colin Hoover books, which is all over TikTok. And from there, I started reading Penelope Douglas. And that's when I found, my favorite author. I think not only is she like super relatable, but she also tells it from the teenage standpoint and moves on to the adult standpoint of the stories, which kind of gives you both views of what it looks like.
I love that. I'm a big reader, and we always do every quarter we do reading episodes, so I love that.
Oh, that's awesome.
And then High Tide is a motivational, inspirational, or self help recommendation. And this week, mine is someone who I've mentioned before, and it's Tam Carr on YouTube. She is like the ultimate big sister YouTuber content creator. And so, if you're trying to become a higher version of yourself or better yourself in any way, definitely check out her videos.
For me, I don't know if you guys listen to country music, but Zach Bryan, I am obsessed with his music, but he also puts out the poems at the end of his albums. And my favorite one is Freaks and Friday Nights. And I love how not only does he discuss like the challenges that he faces, but it's also very soothing and empowering listening to his poems.
I had no idea that he did that. I'm gonna have to look at that because I like some of his music, but I had no idea he did that.
Yes, it is so cool. I love it.
That's so Lana Del Rey of him to do. I love that.
Right? Absolutely.
So let's get into Libby, and let's start with what or who inspired you to pursue hair and makeup.
So, I started competing in pageantry when I was about 11 years old. Now, I don't come from a family with a lot of money, and typically when you compete in pageantry, you're spending thousands of dollars on entry fees, you're spending 10 grand on dresses, then you have hair and makeup, and then all these other things that you have to pay for. So, when I started, I actually learned from somebody locally. Her name is Alex Troop, and she was a hair and makeup artist that was very popular in Georgia. She started to teach me how to do these techniques of, styling my hair, doing my makeup for stage, getting ready for interview. And it really inspired me to kind of start on my own because she started when she was 16 years old. She also did not come from a family with a lot of money, so she had very little to kind of do with. And it really growed on me that I was like, you know, she was able to start when she was 16 years old. Why can't I start now? So at 12 years old, I started doing my own hair and makeup from pageants. When I turned 13,
Wow, yeah, that's very young to start.
yes, yes. I mean, when people were like asking me, they're like, what do you do? I'm like, Miami. And I would do girls for photo shoots with Baron DePar, with other photographers. I would start doing it for pageantry, like little girls. I would never do anybody in my division or in my age cap area just so there wasn't, any people saying that it was not okay.
Right, you want to keep those boundaries.
Yes, there's a lot of stigmatism going around where it's like if you're working in your division, whether it's you're helping another girl in your competition, it's, considered not okay or inappropriate just due to the fact that you guys are competing against each other.
Which I will say, you helped me a lot at Miss Georgia Teen USA, and I was talking with Olivia the other day because she did an interview with me recently, and we were talking about helping each other and how at Miss Georgia Teen USA we were kind of like forced to be with each other all day. And I think that really helped us
Yes.
build stronger relationships.
It did. I love the fact that, we were all together in that room because it really helped us build like a personal one-to-one bond with each other. And I would have never met you if I was never down at that table because normally I do my hair and makeup in my room. So I liked, even though it was a little scary at first, I liked that it pushed me to do it out there with you guys. And, that's where we met, was when you burned your neck with the curling iron. So,
Yes, it was so bad. I am so glad that it healed after I got home. But it was very nice to be in one room together, forcing us to network and make connections. So, who are your role models and why?
I would have to say one of my biggest role models would have to be Selena Gomez. Not only is she a phenomenal singer and absolutely gorgeous, I think we can all agree on that, but she is a super big mental health advocate, which is something that really inspired me that, with her exposure and with her platform, she's able to talk about the things that she's gone through. She's able to talk about the mental health struggles. And that's something that in today's world that we're starting to just now get into, but she's been doing this for years now.
I love Selena. I grew up watching Wizards of Waverly Place. That was my show growing up. So, I've definitely like followed her as she's gotten older and I love that she focuses on self-love and mental health. So, definitely a very good pick. Can you
Yes.
share a pivotal moment that shaped your journey?
A pivotal moment that shaped my journey would have to be losing my mom when I was 9 years old. In 2017, I was living in Colorado. My dad wasn't in the picture, and me and my biological brother had just recently lost my mother due to drug addiction. Now, unfortunately, this was a really traumatic experience, but with this came a lot of brighter things for my future. I'm now adopted with a loving and supporting family that helps me push me and help me grow to become, the strong woman that I am today. I'm now having my own platform, KLB. I have a working job. I have a better connection with my biological brother. And on that note, I've actually started doing a lot of things mental health wise with like social media, community service.
So this is where KLB comes in, and can you talk a little bit about like starting KLB and what the process was to start it?
Yes. So KLB is just kind of like an acronym for Kids Left Behind. When I created this platform or initiative, whichever one you're more comfortable with, I was about 13 years old. So this is about 3.5 years ago. Is when I started, building up the idea. And my goal was to help at-risk youth, help teach them and empower them that their past does not define their future. Because when I was younger, like I just mentioned, I had lost my mom due to drug addiction. Before that, I went through a lot of sexual assault trauma, and there was a lot of jumping around houses and foster care things going on. Like it was a lot for a kid at the age of 6 to 10 to go through. That's when your mind is still starting to grow, your brain is still developing. It's a lot of things and chaoticness that's going on. So my point with KLB was to create this initiative that kind of I can tell my story and I can share my story that kind of helps them look at it as, you know, if I'm a 17-year-old girl who's walking on stage at Georgia Teen USA, happy with all of these friends that I have, doing hair and makeup on the weekends, making money, having a great life, that regardless of the things that I had went through, that you can too. My favorite thing though is when I first started talking about it was 3 years ago in January of 2021. And I had mentioned that I lost my mom due to drug addiction on stage. When I got off stage, there was two families that came up to me back to back, crying, telling me how inspiring it was that I was able to announce that on stage in front of everybody, that I was strong enough to be able to talk about my experience because they had just recently lost both of their fathers due to drug addiction. And that's when I really started connecting with Haley, was her name, and we still talk to this day. We still talk to this day, but she was the one who inspired me to, push KLB to be bigger.
That's such a beautiful story. So, how has building KLB helped you? You're, of course, helping other kids, but how has it helped you and impacted your personal growth and mindset?
Going through all those traumatic events, I wouldn't say necessarily like the best at explaining my feelings or talking about these things. So, having to talk about these in the interview room at pageantry or just in general with my mom and my father, just to kind of get like that baseline going of what I want this to be about when I'm going to foster care systems or I'm going to youth groups, things like that, it pushed me to talk about what I didn't want to. I had never really brought up or mentioned anything about losing my mom or the sexual assault trauma or anything like that until KLB was a thing. So it helped me work out my problems firsthand when I was pushing them all down. And the best thing that you can do, I truly think, is, work through those issues, talk about them, because even if you are needing to cry about it, I think that that's a good thing. It's letting out your emotions, it's letting you grieve all of these things. And now I'm not in that place that I was when I lost my mom of not being able to grieve or think about it because it pushed me to understand the situations more.
So, this trauma and working on your mental health and this focus of building a community and a platform that allows you to talk about it and also push you out of your comfort zone, what role does your mental health play in your success and your ability to help others and be yourself on stage?
The role that I guess would play my mental health for success and just genuinely on a day to day basis I want to say, like, it helps me grow personally, but it also, like you said, helps me be the true person that I am on stage and off a stage. So when I'm on stage, I'm not, competing, thinking I'm somebody else or walking and trying to act like somebody else because I'm proud to be me. I'm proud that even though I struggle with, a lot of PTSD from when I was younger, a lot of anxiety from when I was younger, and a lot more, that I'm okay with talking about that because I never know if the girl next to me or not is struggling with that. And that helps them feel more comfortable to talk about that and share their story as well.
So, being on stage with all these other girls, you're able to be yourself and your confident self. How do you still deal with comparison and competition, especially competing in pageants?
Oh gosh, competing in pageants, I would say is so hard, especially when it comes to, comparing yourself. Um, the first thing that I was ever told is that instead of looking at it as, you and me are competing against each other, let's look at it as we're competing with each other. Regardless of the fact that we're in the same group and we're both out for the same crown, let's do this together. Let's work together. And I think that just makes it so much easier in pageantry that we're not looking at it as like a sport that we're all fighting to the death for. It's a fun, it's a beautiful little transition and experience over the weekend, that we get to bond, we get to make these friendships and all these different things, regardless of whether we come home with the crown or not.
So, growing up competing in pageants, meeting all of these other girls, and building friendships with them, how do you feel like you have grown as a person since starting your journey?
Like I mentioned a little earlier, I think I've grown tremendously, one, but tremendously from being able to speak with each other. So, if you would have asked to do this podcast with me 6, 7 years ago, I would have looked at you and been like, mm-mm, definitely not. I wasn't even able to order my own food at McDonald's. Like, I wasn't even able to ask for a Sprite. So, pageantry and all of the things that I've started doing, my community service, my work, my social media things, all of that's pushed me to become more verbal, and confident in talking and speaking. I really enjoy doing incentive workshops, at pageants, talking with the kids on stage or emceeing and speaking about my journey. And that's really helped me grow as a person and prepare me for adult life.
So, as you're growing and you're working on hair and makeup and competing in pageants and also working in the medical field, how do you define success?
I would define success in my field as genuinely just being happy. When I tell you that I wake up in the morning like, girl, I am so happy to get up at 8 in the morning and go to work, which I thought I would never hear me say. I mean, what 16-year-old girl wants to get up at 8 in the morning? because I know most don't. So the fact that I'm excited and I'm wanting to push myself to go to work to go see, my employees and my patients and all of that, or even if it's traveling 4 hours for a wedding for hair and makeup and go see the bride off on her day and all of these different things, or go to a pageant to give it my crown this weekend. Like, that's what makes me happy, and that's genuinely what makes me strive on a day-to-day basis, and I think that is what I can consider success, because you can be rich, you can have hundreds of thousands of dollars, but girl, if you are not happy, that's not success.
I love that. Make sure that you're building a life that you're excited to wake up to in the morning.
Exactly.
So, as you are building KLB and you're competing, what waves or impact do you hope to make through your work?
I really hope that, I impact a lot more people than just Haley or that other family when I was younger. Talking about my story, I hope that when, I go to these youth groups with, so let me get into what these youth groups are. When I say these youth groups, do you know what I'm talking about when, there's adult groups for like drug addiction? Well, I started youth groups for teens that are struggling with drug addiction because there's not a lot of stuff out there for teens who are struggling, with drug addiction to help them get back on, a better path through their life. And so with these youth groups, my goal is to look at them even though I have never been a drug addict, I have experienced it secondhand. You know, Regardless of whether I wasn't doing drugs when my mom was, that I was still experiencing all of that negativity and all of the consequences still. So my goal was, to kind of like help impact them, that they can look at it as, regardless of all of this stuff that's going on behind you, that you, that you can do better, and that you can really grow from it.
I love that you are making a space for teens to talk about these things and these mental health struggles, because that's what we do here is, there's hundreds and hundreds of podcasts by 20 somethings and for adults, but for teens there's very limited options. So making spaces for teens to have those conversations, that even though they're difficult conversations, is very, very important.
Exactly.
What advice would you give to teenagers interested in pursuing hair and makeup, or pursuing a career in the medical field, or starting pageantry, or starting their own platform?
My advice would kind of be the same for all of them is when I say take the first step, I mean take the first 5 steps. When I started getting into pageantry, I didn't just try out one pageant. I actually entered myself in 2 or 3. I started doing it, every other weekend, because you never really get the feel of something until you start doing it more often. Like, I never knew that I loved coffee flavored ice cream until I ate it like 6 or 7 times. The first time I was like, girl, what is this? So when I say take step one, take step two, three, four, and five with it.
What resources do you recommend to help young people learn about what are those steps, or how do I take those steps?
Resources that I would recommend would be, to be honest with you, I looked a lot on TikTok and Google and YouTube. I took a lot of videos, listening to other people's advices. Um, for pageantry, I actually followed Shayla Jackson. She was the 2020 Georgia Teen USA girl. She is so inspiring. Her little brother has autism, and she's actually deaf in both of her ears. So it's really inspiring hearing about her journey, that regardless of all the things that she went through, and regardless of the fact that, she can't hear, that she's still Georgia Teen USA 2020, and she's grown this whole life. So it really is just kind of looking in your community, looking at the people who have already expired or experienced that job or whatever it is that you're passionate about, that you really want to get into, and ask them their advice.
Finding people that have done what you want to do and learning from them.
Yep.
So, how can young people navigate challenges and setbacks when starting to compete in pageants, or building a platform, or going into a career like you have?
No matter what you do, there's going to be setbacks. You're going to have people tell you no. You're going to have people shut the door in your face. When, doing pageantry and hair and makeup, there was so many people that I asked if I could do practice hair and makeup on them. So many people I asked for sponsorships. And 10 times, 9 times out of 10, I'm pretty sure I got no more than I did yes. So just be prepared for somebody to tell you no. Be prepared for somebody to look at you and be like, maybe not today, because just because you're getting a no now doesn't mean that you won't get a yes later.
Knowing that rejection is going to come whether you want it or not, but that's part of the process.
Like my biggest saying is regret is bigger than rejection.
I love that one. I'm going to post that on the podcast
Mhm.
story. I love that
You
one.
should. You should.
Well, before we look forward, let's look back. And what is one thing you wish you knew when you started?
One thing I wish I knew when I started, that's a hard one. I would probably have to say, you know, that I like to talk. I wish that I really, when I first started, I wasn't a big talker, but if you let me, I would sit here and I would tell you 5 million different stories. Because if I knew that I could talk, girl, I would have been doing this way earlier in life.
I definitely am the same way. Before I started the podcast, I would talk and tell stories to people I was comfortable with, but talking to people I didn't know, I was very quiet. So definitely knowing that I'm
Mhm.
actually excited to talk to people and tell stories. I love that. How do you stay motivated and what inspires you to keep going?
How I stay motivated kind of depends on the days because there's a lot of days that, I'm not motivated to get up out of bed. I just want to lay there in my PJs and just sleep all day. But what pushes me is knowing that I'm almost 17. I'll actually be 17 on August 5th. So I have a lot ahead of me. I'm about to graduate next year as a senior. I'm dual enrolled with college, that these are my prime years as a teen, that if I don't motivate myself and push myself to do the best that I can, that my early adult life is going to be a lot more of a struggle.
What new challenges are you looking forward to moving into early adult life?
Definitely not paying bills, that's for sure, because my pocket does not like to hold money. I like to spend, spend, spend. So paying bills is going to be a struggle, but I'm looking forward to being on my own, honestly. I'm looking forward to having my own place and having my own space that I can decorate, and with my aesthetic and make it feel like my home.
I definitely am looking forward to being on my own and being independent, but bills are another story.
Right?
How do you plan to continue making waves in the future?
How I plan making waves in the future is kind of just keep doing what I'm doing. Find more groups and more services that, I can kind of put myself in to kind of help bring other people into, whether that's not just talking about teens with drug addiction, but moving on to alcohol addiction, addiction in general, or people who have lost their, friends or family, whether it was from a car accident, anything like that, because those are the people that most people don't really talk about. I didn't know that in my sixth grade class, the guy who sat next to me had lost his dad in 2017 due to drug addiction. Like, it's honestly crazy how many people have, and you don't know until it's brought up.
Well, thank you for sharing your story with us and reminding us that we probably have more people around us that are similar to us than we think.
Yes. For everybody listening, know your worth and never settle for less. Like whether that goes for a guy or work or anything like that. That's something that I kind of struggled with, and just keep going forward.
Keep going forward, keep pushing. So, where can we connect with you and learn more about your work? Where can we follow you online?
You can follow me on Instagram at Libby under dash Wooten. I post a lot of stuff on there, which is tags all of my social media content, so you can kind of go from there and see everything.
Amazing. All of those links will be in the episode notes. And for this week's homework, if you had to start over, what are the first steps you would take? Or what is something that the listeners can do right now to implement what we discussed?
Sharing their stories. I think it'd be super cool to hear all the people that are listening to this podcast, what's something that, you struggled with, but you overcome. What are some things that, you went through, but you've grown from, and now you look at it as, thank you that I've been able to grow past this.
I love that. I will put a question under this episode if you're listening on Spotify that you can answer that question if you want. And Libby, thank you so much for joining me.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Of course, and thank you so much for listening. If you love this podcast and you want to show your support, please leave a rate and review, as well as follow me on all of my social media at the Moana Adams or at makingwaves.ma. Be sure to follow this show so you never miss another episode. Don't forget to drink your water, and I will talk to you later.